Hey everybody, so I just wanted to make this video. It's going to be about NCLEX. I've had several people ask me, how did I study for the NCLEX, what did I do to prepare, kind of how that all went into play. Sorry about such bad lighting. But anyhow, so I have a couple points here that I'm going to be looking at my phone. I wrote down as I thought of them over the past week, and first I want to start with the books I used. So I went to the Hearst program and did the Hearst program, which my school offered. We had to pay for it, but what it was 3 days, full days basically, on campus where we would come in and they had somebody from the company who they sent to our school, and they walked through this book with us. So this is the book that we used. This was the one that they gave us, and basically what they did is each day that we were there, we went through the book and filled in the blanks, and it was kind of just like a review course, and it was a review of hot topics, or like topics to remember that maybe hadn't been covered in a while, or that they had heard were topics that occurred a lot on the NCLEX from other NCLEX takers. So, here's the first page. I'll just show you. So it's kind of like a fill-in-the-blank interactive view or whatever, and they have boxes here in the corners of important things. This one is just like how AMP works in the body, but some of them have like testing strategies on the side. Others have values. So here's the CVP normal values. And like one of the testing strategies for this was fluid retention. Think heart first, like heart problems first. So CHF, stuff like that. Here's one that says anytime testing is a testing strategy, anytime you see assessment or evaluation on the NCLEX, you should be looking for the presence or absence of the pertinent signs and symptoms. So it's got a lot of those kinds of clues, things that help you think. It's got a couple practice questions, but it goes through the signs and symptoms of important things. They help you think like different things that you should be thinking of if you hear certain words. So like one of them was aldosterone, think sodium and water. And then they have this, through this program you get this online account, so you can go online and they have 6 different NCLEX exams that you can take, and then afterwards they give you rationales for what the right answers were, why those answers were the answers they were or weren't what they were. But they're NCLEX based questions, and they were just there to help you. They also had additional assessments. So this is one of the books I used to study on my own afterwards. We had the class the first 3 days after we had finished our last semester. So it was like we were done, but we weren't really quite done, And then I wrote down some notes. I'm just going to say these right now because these technically aren't Hearst material that I'm not supposed to share, but they're my personal notes that I wrote in the book in the front. I just, each day when she would say something important, I would add it to my list of things to remember when taking the NCLEX. So I'm going to share those with you right now. So you might want to grab a paper and pencil and write these down for yourself as well when you're testing, because I found these super helpful when I was practicing, and then even when I was in it on the exam, stopping and thinking through, oh, that was one of the points, think this or go with this or whatever. So that's how I kind of came to how I studied for it and how I thought through the questions even on the exam. So my first one is know positions for procedures, etc., and for greatest comfort, what allows them to breathe. So one of my questions was, how do you place a person who is receiving an enema? And you have to think about the heart, thinking about placement, something like that. Positions for procedures, that could be for enemas, for catheters, inserting catheter, how are you going to position the patient, anything like that. When answering any questions on the NCLEX, avoid the use of restraints. That is always the last case scenario. On every question that you're answering on the NCLEX, always assume the worst. So if your patient in the question on NCLEX is bleeding, don't look at that as they're bleeding a little bit. Anything that possibly blood is coming out, think of it as they're bleeding, this patient's going to die. Like that kind of last worst case scenario, you know. And that's what they told us. Never pick a question that reassesses. So maybe one of the options is, I saw this a lot, was one of the answer options was reassess vitals in 15 minutes. That doesn't tell the doctor anything. That doesn't tell the NCLEX people anything. When you're answering NCLEX questions, one of the core things to remember is that whatever answer you pick, NCLEX is going to assume you are going to pick that answer every single time. So in that situation where it says reassess vitals every 15 minutes, to the NCLEX, you're saying, okay, you know, something's not right, so I'm going to take their vitals. I took their vitals. It's been 15 minutes. Something's still not right. I'm just going to take their vitals again. So if you pick that reassess and take vitals in 15 minutes, they're going to think you're going to pick that for every single answer. So what they want you to pick is not the reassess question or answers, but what are you going to do to actually care for these patients? And I just realized it kind of sounds like I'm yelling, but I'm trying to talk over my washer and dryer so that you can hear me, because once again, I started laundry on my day off so that I have clothes for this week. And it's really loud, and I don't know how well you guys can hear me or whatever, so that's why I'm kind of talking a little louder in this video than most any other video I'm sure I've ever made. But anyhow, back to these points. I have a lot of points here, guys. I'm sorry. But hopefully it helps you guys when you're taking the NCLEX as well as when you're studying for the NCLEX. So, next one. Okay, so when you're answering a question that maybe is it's a challenging question maybe. When you're answering any question, that patient in your question is the only patient that you have to care for. So, if you don't feel safe when you're reading that question, if that patient sounds critical and you don't feel safe leaving them to go do something else, don't leave them. Don't pick one of those options that's going to cause you to leave your patient. Pick whichever option is safest and going to care for the patient while you're right there. When you are answering these questions, that patient on your screen is the only patient you have to worry about. Unless it's a question stating, these are 4 of your patients, and it has scenarios of things that are going wrong with them. What are you going to prioritize first? Those questions are different. But if it's a question solely about one patient only, that is your only patient. Don't leave them if you don't feel safe leaving that patient in that room by themselves. Select all that apply will be a minimum of 2 answers, but could be all options that are available. That was something new 2 weeks before I started taking the NCLEX. NCLEX used to be select all that apply were at least 3 or more answers. However, now, as of November 2016, those select all apply were at least 2, but it could be all possible options that are present. So keep that in mind. Priority questions. Always call the MD versus check vital signs. Again, that's coming back to if one of the options is call the MD and the second option is reassess or check vital signs in 15 minutes, you're telling the patient, okay, if this is happening, I'm going to just check vital signs every 15 minutes until they either improve or they're dead. Whereas if you pick, call MD, you know something's wrong, you've maybe done procedures for it, and now you're going to call the doctor and be like, listen, this is the patient, whatever. So again, remember to think of those questions that whatever you pick, whatever your answer is, no matter what patient the NCLEX give you, if they give you that style, you're telling them that every time you're going to pick reassess vital signs. Or are you going to call the MD when you know something's wrong and you can't do anything about it? As far as priority questions, go based on what patient is going to die first. That's the first patient you're going to want to take care of. That's any patient that maybe is bleeding out of any orifice of their body. Those are the ones you're going to want to attend to first in priority questions. I had a lot of priority questions. But again, I had 75 questions and my test shut off. So I was obviously answering those correctly, or else it would have given me a lot more than 75, because I probably had about half of my test was prioritization on how are you going to care for these patients. No, when you see assessment and evaluation, which I just read this from the book earlier, when you see assessment and evaluation, think signs and symptoms, either signs and symptoms that are present in the patient or signs and symptoms that are missing. And you'll know based on how the question is asking which one you're going to select or think about. Every question on the NCLEX has a safety issue in it. Your job is to pick what that safety issue is in the question and what answer is applicable to that and is going to keep the patient the safest. That's a good one. Any answer on the NCLEX that has you're going to do this or you're going to do this, you, during the NCLEX, have an order, and think that in your head you have an order to do that. You don't have to call and ask for an order to do that. When you're answering the NCLEX, think that, okay, this guy needs bladder scanned. You have an order for that. Whatever it is that you think might needs to be done or what the answer is, even if it's like, well, I need to call the doctor first to get an order for that, no. You have the order for it. The doctor's approved it. Which one of those is applicable to the question, going to do the most potential, keeping them safe or whatever, and that's the answer you're going to pick. If you get a question and it's a topic that you just don't know, do not sit there and stew over the question and think, is it this one or is it this one? Maybe it's this one. If you honestly don't know and you can't think of it within 3 minutes of what the answer might be, then you have the right to just answer the question and move on. It's one question. It's not going to be detrimental to your score. We had people who, in our graduating class, who got like 252 questions and it shut off. So you never know how many questions you're going to get. You're not guaranteed to get 75. You're not guaranteed to get 275. So answer every question to the best of your ability. Please do not give up when you're in the middle of the test and just start randomly answering things. If you need a break, take a second, calm down, breathe, and get back into the exam. There was one girl who she took the NCLEX in our class twice and failed it both times, and came to me after the second one and asked me, what did you do to study? What can I do to pass this? Like, I have to pass this. I need to pass this. And I told her, I said, honestly, I studied my butt off during nursing school, and that I attribute a lot to because that information was fresh in my brain, and, I knew my stuff. Which maybe she didn't. But I'm not going to say she did or didn't. I said, but as far as studying for the NCLEX, this is how I studied for it, and that's really all I can tell you. I gave her my, cheats and notes here that I'm telling you guys, and she ended up passing it. So, do with this what you want. And then I just have written down here, assume the worst. So don't spend time on one question. That's what I was saying. and get yourself worked up. If you don't know the information, you don't know it. Sitting there for 5, 10, 20 minutes is not going to help you remember the answer to the question. Answer it, move on. The next question maybe you'll be able to understand. Another tool that I used to study for the NCLEX was Lippincott Question and Review for NCLEX RN. I got this at Barnes & Noble in my town, but here's the book, the author. Highly recommend this book. It's got practice questions in here. It's got like keys to help you think. It's got rationales. It's got a bunch of practice tests in every category of every kind that you would see on the NCLEX. It's got a CD in the back. This is the 11th edition. Highly recommend this book. Helped a lot with answering questions and rationales. I used that all through nursing school actually, but especially studying for the exam. That was very helpful. So those are the two materials that I really used for studying for the NCLEX. Some other tips or advice that I could give you for the NCLEX is when you're studying, don't study topics that you know you're good and solid on. Study the topics that you're weak on, because those are the questions that are going to trip you up when you're in there taking the exam. If you did any of those ATI exams, if your school had you do ATI, what I would recommend was I printed all of my test sheets out and went through and looked at what topics was I weak on, or what topics did I score less than 75% on. And I went back and looked at those questions in comparison to my ATI book, and then answered those questions, took maybe a couple notes just to refresh myself. And then I would go on one of my NCLEX apps, studying apps, and I would just answer questions on that over and over, and maybe focus on one topic a day, and get really solid on that. One of the apps I used, and I don't have it on my phone anymore, I would show you guys, it's UWorld. Highly recommend that app. The questions on that app are very similar to the NCLEX style questions. They have rationales on there, and you can get it on your phone. It costs to do it, and you got like a 90-day membership subscription or whatever. It wasn't that much. I want to say it was like $15 maybe. But highly recommend that. Those questions were NCLEX questions on my exam. It was very similar. Those rationales that they offer on UWorld were very short, sweet, and to the point, and a lot of them included pictures that helped describe or depict or whatever that they were talking about. But that app was very similar to the NCLEX. Wink, wink. Do the practice questions and look at the rationales. Whether you get the questions right or wrong, read the rationales, because maybe you got that question right, but you guessed on it. That the rationales are going to tell you why each one is wrong and why the one that is right, and it might teach you something through those rationales that maybe you didn't know that will come in handy later on when you're testing. So highly recommend reading the rationales, even if you answer them correctly. And I would say do a minimum of 150 questions a day until you take the NCLEX. I started practicing 3 weeks before the NCLEX, and I did practice questions all through nursing school. And during nursing school, you're busy, but I would lay in bed at night and I would answer 50 to 100 questions each night in bed before I fell asleep, just to give me that practice. Set your alarm before you do that, because there were sometimes I would get to question like 75 and I'd start falling asleep in my bed, and then I'd forget to set my alarm. But thankfully I would wake up in time in the morning, or I'd wake up in the middle of the night and set my alarm. So set your alarm, then do the practice questions in case you fall asleep. But I would literally get in bed, do either 50 or 100 questions, and call it a night. But when you're not in nursing school, if you can do 500 questions a day, highly recommend it. Repetition is key. Repetition is going to help you remember, one, these key facts that I just read to you that I got from Hearst on how to answer questions, but it would also help you firm up that, delegation, prioritizing questions, because let me tell you, those were heavy on the NCLEX for everyone in my class, it seemed like. Don't study the day before. That was one of my things. I was taking the exam on a Monday, so I actually did not study 2 days before. I studied so hard for 3 weeks that by the end of the 3 weeks, I could feel myself physically getting burnt out and tired and just fed up. So what I did was the 2 days before the NCLEX, also I had a military ball that I was going to 2 days before, and I was like, I don't want to study before the ball. Like, I want to just enjoy myself and have fun. So I spent the 2 days beforehand just relaxing. I went out and laid by the pool. I went to the military ball. The day before, I told my boyfriend to fill as much stuff in the day that he could to keep my mind and my anxiety off of the exam that I was taking in the morning. So we went to the beach. We went to a museum, which we ended up leaving because it was stressing me out. We went out to eat. We went and saw a movie. So you can watch a movie at your place. We were counting it as like our date night because we hadn't had one in a while. So we were able to do it that way. But, you know, if money's tight, go home, you know, see if one of your girls or guys can come over, watch a movie, play video games, anything to get your mind off of the NCLEX. Don't study. Studying 2 days before the exam isn't going to do anything for you. You're not going to remember anything new at that point, and you're just going to be burnt out when you go in to take the test the next day. So I highly recommend not studying the day before because you've already put in all the time and effort that you're going to put in. Studying one day before the exam is just going to cause you more anxiety, more stress, and potentially cause you to end up having to take the NCLEX again. So, and then my last thing I just remembered was remember legalities. Legalities and what each person can do within the medical field. So RNs can get the most critical patients. This I'm saying because I had a couple questions on the NCLEX like this. But just remember that RNs can get the most critical patients in your delegation thing. LPNs get stable patients, but they do not get patients that are critical or seem like, okay, this problem is kind of small, but I could definitely see it being a huge problem. That's not a patient you're going to want to give to an LPN or somebody who's floating to the floor from another unit. That was another question. If someone's floating to the floor from another unit and you're on a cardiology floor and you have a nurse who's floating down to your unit from labor and delivery, you're not going to want to give them a patient that is potentially about to have a huge cardiac problem when they're used to dealing with pregnant mothers who are giving babies and not having huge heart problems like this. So think about it in that terms as well. And also remember that you do not want to delegate what you can eat. And that's a little phrase that I used in nursing school to remember. Do not delegate what you can eat. EAT. Eat is evaluate, A is assess, T is teach. Don't delegate to someone else something that requires you to evaluate the patient because ultimately that's the RN's responsibility. Don't delegate something that's going to cause that it has to be assessed on that patient because assessing is the RN's responsibility. And don't delegate something that you physically have to teach the patient because that falls on the RN's responsibility. LPNs can reinforce teaching, but they cannot do the initial teaching of something to a patient. So just remember those tips, I would say, when you're taking the NCLEX as well as when you're studying and answering practice questions. That'll come in handy. I know I've thrown a lot at you guys, and this video is getting kind of long, and I apologize, but I've just been putting this information together for the past couple weeks now because I had someone ask me about it, and then that girl in my cohort who was taking the NCLEX and needed to pass. I just felt like this would be beneficial to you guys, and I had someone asking, so I really wanted to get this video out to you guys, especially since I know for some people the end of the semester is coming up if you're in nursing school and you might be getting prepared to take that NCLEX. So this is just what I did to study, and it worked for me. It might not work for you, but these are tips and suggestions I have from when I took the NCLEX, and now that I've been able to soak in and think back and, you know, really see what I did that maybe was helpful or what I did that wasn't helpful, and if I didn't think it was helpful, it wasn't in this video. So, that being said, these were tips that I used. it's just what I did. You don't have to do them, but hopefully these suggestions and little tidbits help you as you're either preparing for the NCLEX or getting ready to that point, that you'll remember some of these hints, I guess, helpful hints or whatever. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it made sense. If you guys have any questions in regards to any of this information, any NCLEX questions whatsoever, please feel free to comment below with those questions. I'm more than happy to help answer them, or even clarifying topics that maybe you're not sure about. Go ahead and leave those in the comments. Thank you for watching. Please thumbs up and like this video. Leave a comment below if you have any suggestions on other videos you'd like to see, any NCLEX questions or questions in general that you have for me. I'm more than happy to answer those for you. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Bye!